So, Richard Sherman, you played in 2 Super Bowls with Russell Wilson up in Seattle. Can you see him leading Sean Payton's Broncos to this year's playoffs?
They sit at 10th right now, Skip. While this 4-game winning streak has been great, their defense, Vance Joseph, deserves a ton of credit. He was much maligned after the 70-point Miami Dolphins loss. But I think it's just too tall of a hill to climb for them right now. I mean, they have to play the Browns, who are playing outstanding defense as well. Right. They have to play the Lions. They have to beat the Chargers, which is a win I think they can get. They play them twice, so I think they get one of those. But I don't see them doing enough. I think the other teams have too big of a lead at this point in time for them to recover. But it's still a great story. They were 1-5. A lot of people had them drafting very early in this draft, maybe even Caleb Williams. And now they've fought themselves out of that hole, and they're playing good football.
Now, they pulled themselves maybe out of the Caleb Williams hole, but not all the way out of a hole. We'll discuss all of that as we move through it. Now, it's interesting because, Sherman, when you go through that schedule, they do Cleveland next week, and then at Houston, and at Chargers, and then at Detroit. They got 3 road games in a row that they can lose all 3 of them and get them to 8 losses already. So that's why it's going to be tough. It's going to be very tough. And, what's funny is when I was going through it, I started laughing, and I know we'll talk about this later, but I said Cleveland, I said, at Houston. You know how you can start putting in an L when you used to go on the schedule, see Houston and say that was a win.
That's true.
I said, that's an L right there, right away. That's just, we'll talk about Houston, too, later on. But right here, you see it. You got to give them and say congratulations. They won 4 games in a row. That's pretty incredible. Russell Wilson threw for 259 yards and a touchdown yesterday. Had over 100 passer rating. You said, wow, that sounds pretty good. 19 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. That leads the NFL. You said, man, Russ must really be having a year, 7 games, over 100 passer rating. That's another lead to NFL. Russ may be having a year, a great year. And then you got to say, there's no way they carry this into next year with what you're seeing on the football field for the Denver Broncos.
Agreed.
There is no way that offense gets back on the field. Sean Payton talked about it. The highs of winning, especially in this offense, doesn't match the lows of losing when it goes down. And he really talked about that at the podium, and I thought was interesting because what do? You can't find, this offense has no systematic way to move the football unless you call Russell Wilson running around, coming up with something, and then saying, Cortland Sutton or somebody, please catch this football. Because every touchdown that he's thrown, it's been incredible plays. Incredible plays made by wide receivers and balls that look like they were just hanging and floating. So you got to give them all the credit in the world for winning these football games, winning 4 football games. As I said to Keyshawn, it's hard in the National Football League. So I want to give Coach Payton a lot of credit and give Russell credit. But, man, there's no way this is going to be the Broncos next year. They got to do something.
So I think I just heard you say they probably will not make this year's playoffs because Richard was pretty much a no on that.
No. Right? I think it's going to be hard. Because if you lose 3 of these games, you're already at 8 losses right there. And that's, maybe 8 losses get you in. But I think you'll even lose more than 3.
Okay. So here's the irony for me in watching what I watched last night. I was actually more impressed with Sean Payton's Broncos before last night's game, in the previous 3 games, than I was last night. When last night's game ended, I scratched my head and said, how did they win that game? It took me a while to figure out how did they survive and win the game, because even though Russ's stats look okay, 27 of 35 for, 259, my mind's eye told me he did not play well last night. And the stats told me that he and his offense, 3 of 12 on 3rd down. Right. The stats told me that the first 9 times they had the ball, they wound up with 5 field goals and 4 punts because they kept doing something to self-destruct as they approached or entered the red zone, a penalty or a misfire or something. And to Michael's point, it just seems like Russ, and again, Richard lived with this for a long time in Seattle and thrived on it for a long time in Seattle, but now it feels like at age 34 that he just bolts immediately. It's like maybe one quick look and then he's scrambling around trying to make a play, and he doesn't have quite the athletic movement, the quickness, the escapability that he once did. And it came down to one throw. And when the ball left his hand, if we could see the touchdown pass to Courtland Sutton, as soon as it left his hand, I thought that's intercepted because he just
by the cornerback that was going to drop off
floater. Yeah, he just throws a floater up for grabs, and it's obviously a jump ball. And he said, "We practiced this."
Right there.
Okay, so he high points a young man who's a big, strong, almost a DK Metcalf of a receiver in Courtland Sutton, who just goes up and wins the.
Get it?
Huh?
He goes up and
he just goes up and snatches it out of the sky. And that's the football game. And then just to reinforce this, they try a 2-point try that would have given them a 3-point lead, and it's just an abomination. It's just like, what? If we could see their 2-point try, said, what was that? Well, what exactly? He bobbles the snap. It was just like disastrous, but it wasn't a disaster because they won 21-20. So to Richard's point, I look at this defense over the last 4 games. So the last 4 games, after they gave up 70 points really in 3 quarters at Miami, I'm looking at they are first in points allowed over the last 4 games in the NFL. They have the most takeaways in the NFL with 13 over the last 4 games.
12 over the last 3 games.
They do. And they have the best turnover differential in all of football over the last 4 games. But then you get down to my favorite quarterback stat, QBR, and Russ is hanging way down at 19th in QBR because he hasn't played very well. And QBR said last night that Joshua Dobbs completely outplayed him because Josh Dobbs had a 55, which is a little above average, and Russ was a 32 last night in QBR. So QBR is saying he played a pretty lousy game, and yet he made that one throw, and he made a nice 4th down conversion to Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton is a stud, man. I mean, we knew that going
doing that right there, doing that part right there for him right now and for Denver right now, because ultimately, Sherman, you know this, those kinds of offensive plays are something that we have this too when everything else goes wrong. They're not anything you can live off of. This is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. No, that's snack. That's just a snack. You cannot feed off that every day. It doesn't happen like that in the National Football League, and that's what I'm saying. There's just no way this is going to be a playoff team. Not without a better run game, a better something to move this football. You only have one rushing TD the whole season. Now I love that. I love Skip that you go QBR because, as I said to you, this man is first. He has 100 pass rating 7 times this season. Nobody else has 7. And you'll say, that's pretty good right there. But it's not pretty good. Okay. So and I don't want to beam down on Denver. They won. Congratulations on that.
By the way, Russ does have 19 touchdown passes to only 4 interceptions. So Sean has cleaned up the act, right?
Great pass.
Okay.
I mean, Russell has cleaned up the act, too. He's played well. He's thrown the ball well. He doesn't take a lot of risks. He checks it down to his running backs when he needs to. He gets the first downs he needs to that way. But at the end of the day, it's not sustainable for the playoffs. You're going to have to push the ball down the field more in the playoffs. You got to be consistent with the run game. This defense is playing like a playoff caliber defense for sure, especially the last 4 weeks. You just noted all the stats. Yeah. But I just don't think they have enough offensively to beat these teams. I think they split with the Chargers. I think they lose to the Houston Texans. I think C.J. Stroud plays a big game then. I think this defense eventually regresses back to what they were earlier this season. Maybe not to 70 points to Miami regress, but they do start to give up more than 20 points. They haven't – I mean, I think the most they've given up on this winning streak is 22 points. And so I think they do regress back. I think the Detroit Lions get them. I think the Houston Texans get them. I think the Browns get them. I think the Chargers get them once. I think they beat the Raiders in a dogfight. I mean, I think they beat the Chargers in a dogfight, but that's not enough to get you in the playoffs. And they watch him from home, and then they got a lot of questions to answer because you have to figure out if you're going forward with Russ and the way he's played. And the way he's played says you have to go forward with him. He's not the problem right now. He's not necessarily the reason you're losing these games. Are you the reason you lost all these games earlier? He's got 19 touchdowns to only 4 interceptions, has a big cap number next year. You have to figure out if he's a part of your future, if Sean Payton wants to be a part of his future. If not, that's a tough question and a tough decision they have to make.
So Richard, let me ask Richard a quick question before you go. Richard, the quarterback you played with, went to 2 Super Bowls with, how different did that quarterback look to you, to your eye, than this Russell Wilson looks in Denver?
He looks a lot different just because he's not pushing the ball down the field as much. I think in Seattle he had more of a rapport with Jermaine Kearse, Doug Baldwin, even Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, and he would throw up those 50-50 balls. He'd scramble around and not just throw it, 20 yards down the field, 15 yards down the field. He'd be putting it 50 yards down the field on a post, a go route, and over to Tyler Lockett because he had a different kind of rapport and trust with those guys. I think he's starting to develop that trust with Cortland Sutton. You saw the pass. He put it up there where his receiver could go up there and get it. He's done that a few times this season, but he just hasn't done it as often as he had in Seattle. He's being a little bit more conservative, and he's taking care of the ball. So you got to give him credit for that.
He's doing that.
And my thing is this. As I look at a football game, I'm trying to say, okay, even Denver, I'm looking at Denver and say, okay, where can this team get better? If you move forward with Russ, what do you see? Who do we kind of go and get to say, oh, he's going to make Russ better? See, I think Russ already have all those tools already there. You see what I mean? He has Cortland Sutton, the guy that can go up and get the big ball. He has Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy, that blitz came right in Russell's face. Russell got that ball off. Now the defensive back made a pretty good play, but Jerry Jeudy still should have called that as a touchdown. You know what I mean? So he has he has things around him. And I'm saying this offense is not going to be enough. So are you going to give me the #1 rushing game to add to it? Because I'm going to need something more out of this offense to say, let's keep moving forward in this same direction. That's what's hard for me when I look at it.
Okay, but I have really liked Javonte Williams over the past the previous 3 games. And then last night, he
played hard.
Stonewalled,
and they run hard.
Minnesota's really good on defense, but he tried 11 carries. We saw the 2-point that didn't count in the stats, but he tried 11 times and got a grand total of 37 yards. And Denver rushed it for a grand total of 46 yards last night. Usually that will lose football games.
Right.
But the other team, Josh Dobbs and company, turned it over 3 times. So it was 3-0 on the turnovers. And as you guys know, that almost always tells the same tale, which is the team with 0 turnovers wins the game. And that's what happened because it felt like Minnesota just went up and down the field on them. Minnesota controlled the clock and like Minnesota had the ball for 35 minutes to 25 for us. Well, it's because they kept turning it over. And if we could quickly see the 3 Minnesota turnovers, this is what happened. Every time it looked like, uh-oh, here they come, they're going to take this game over. Then this is the first one. Whoops. Yep. That was a toss to I don't even know why they would run that, but they did. And then Madison lost that fumble, got stripped, and then Josh Dobbs.
And they're doing a good job of going after
his arm got hit and he got picked. Yeah.
Well, that defense is playing tight. That's tight defense.
Yeah.
And they're doing a good job at pulling that ball out and getting rid of it. But we're sitting here talking about a win for the Denver Broncos. Let's be real mindful that the Denver Broncos had 9 points this whole game. They scored 12 of the 21 in the fourth quarter doing that stuff. So, to say that, hey, that's a great win, that's a good win for them, a 4-game winning streak. But taking this into the playoffs, it's just hard to see that.
All right. So Josh Dobbs, I thought, outplayed Russell Wilson in the big picture last night. And if we could see the 2 touchdowns that he scored, the first one, you want to talk about poise and presence. He escapes to the right, and then I thought I thought he was done right there, and he stopped, and he said, well, I can just do that for that touchdown.
That Patrick Mahomes stuff.
That was a little Patrick Mahomes, and then he escapes. Josh Dobbs can move. He can flat out move, and he's slippery in the pocket. He's hard to get a hold of. And Sean Payton said after the game that he was shocked at how tall that he's a full 6'3", so he can see over a lot of the oncoming pass rushers. Josh Dobbs is playing at the high level, and I'm sure they're just sick to death this morning because it's another game where you say, well, look what we did. Look what we pulled off. If you look at total yards, they had almost 100 more yards. And you say, well, we went up and down the field, and what do we have to show for it? 21-20 Denver. That's what we have to show for it. Wasn't that how Buffalo felt the week before? They pretty much moved the ball at will, and they lost, right? Because they botched it. They had 12 men on the field for a missed late field goal. All right, so back to their schedule.
But Russ has always been that way. If you keep him around long enough, Russ can pull out a win late in the game.
Okay, so this is a hot football team that is winning games sort of head-scratchingly, where you say, I don't know how they pulled that off, but they did. Could they beat the Browns with, obviously, no Deshaun? Well, I don't know. It's going to be a low-scoring game, but again, I think they could beat the Browns. At Houston, I don't think they can win. At Chargers, listen, the Chargers are they're about to be a wreck, and I don't know if the head coach is going to last the whole season. He got very defensive last night. Brandon Staley did in his
But they got him twice, Skip. Now, you don't see them sweeping nobody with no brooms, right? You don't see them sweeping nobody.
I don't know. I mean, would it shock me if they won those games? I mean, the only game that I see that I don't think Denver can win is at Detroit, obviously. And yet the Bears had them at Detroit and let them off the hook. So, to me, I'm just not sure about Russell Wilson playing at a high enough level to lift this team up after a 1-5. I just don't know if he's playing at a high enough level to lift this team up into a playoff slot. And going forward, this is just my gut feeling from a distance. I don't have any inside knowledge of this. I don't think Sean Payton loves Russell Wilson. I just don't think it's his kind of guy, his cup of tea or Gatorade. And even though they owe him a lot of money, if I know Sean, he's the kind of guy who would just plunge and say, we got to get out from under this any way possible. So my gut feeling is that Russell Wilson is not Sean Payton's future in Denver.
Yeah, and that's what I thought too. And I don't know the numbers, but if the numbers play where you can't make a move, then I guarantee you, or I believe, I should say, I shouldn't guarantee this, that Sean will be bringing in some more, bringing in other quarterbacks, maybe like he did in New Orleans, maybe another dual threat quarterback who gives him some other options. But I guarantee, I don't believe he sticks with this all the way through. I just,
they're gonna have a hard time getting from under this, and then they're gonna have a hard time justifying it because Russell Wilson is playing as well as he has. He's 19 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. If he continues this pace and has a career high in touchdown to interception ratio, and you tell me Sean Payton's getting rid of him after the season, they're going to have a hard time explaining that to fans, regardless of what he feels about him, either way.
Hey, Richard, there's one thing I know about Sean Payton. He does not care what anybody else thinks.
And Sherm, I can't agree with that, Sherm. Sherm, listen, I know we always say numbers don't lie, but clearly that's not the total reality, and that's why they come up with the QBRs.
He's 19th in QBR.
But you got to give him credit for finding ways to win games, because that's the most important thing here.
I do.
And he's found a way to win games, and he's always been that kind of clutch. As a matter of fact, I think that's when he's at his best. When the game is late and all of this stuff you sat down on a piece of paper and came up with goes out the window, let me do my thing. That's when Russ becomes dangerous. Like he likes to say, dangerous. He becomes dangerous. But just setting up, making a drive, every play, knowing you need that drive, it's not the kind of offense that I've seen that Sean Payton wants, that you've seen him have over the years. It's going to be difficult.
Up next, it is time for us to talk Cowboys. Keyshawn Johnson joins me and Michael to talk about this. My take, why the Cowboys' road win yesterday is being underrated. That's next. Watching Undisputed fans, do you want more highlights from the show? Make sure to click that subscribe button for all the exclusive content from Undisputed.